Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I really enjoyed this one.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which released in 1990 from writer David J. Show and director Jeff Burr. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows Michelle and Ryan. They're a couple heading across country because Michelle has decided that she needs a little bit time away from Ryan. Along the way, they happen across Tex, played by Viggo Mortensen, who happens to tell them that one of the quickest paths to where she needs to get to is down this little road. As she heads down there, their tires pop, they come across a crazed family, and there's a guy with a chainsaw chasing them.
Yakety yak, don't talk back.
So this time around, the rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise have landed at New Line Cinema, who picked up the rights because, well, their Freddy, their Nightmare on Elm Street series was pretty much coming to a conclusion, and they were like, hey, Leatherface can probably take us for another decade of sequels.
Well, yeah, that and Canon had just been taken out, so
that's right.
It was cheap.
So New Line they saw the dollar signs, and so they rushed into production on this one. They actually went so quickly into production on this that they filmed the trailer.
Right.
And it's a bloody fantastic trailer where Leatherface is kind of at the lake, and the lady in the lake offers him the chainsaw.
That's right, yeah.
And believe it or not, it's actually Kane Hodder who's actually playing Leatherface in this trailer.
Nice, yeah.
But that's how excited New Line were that they released the trailer and went, we don't even have a director yet. We don't even know what the film's going to be about yet.
Yeah.
And eventually they did hire Jeff Burr, and they got into production, and then New Line were like, you're going over budget, you're going over time, and if you don't do these or make these changes now, we're going to fire you.
Yeah.
And Jeff Burr was like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, and they went, you're fired.
Yeah.
And so the production tried to carry on without him. And they also looked at, apparently, up to nearly 50 directors for this film.
I had read, yes.
And when every one of them said, nope, hey, Jeff Burr, do you want to come back and carry on directing? He was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
And then the studio, well, when the film was made, the studio had to submit the film to the MPAA and extensively, I think like around 11, 12 times. And all of the good bits from the film was then cut out.
Yeah.
And even when the director saw the final cut of the film, he was like, I didn't even shoot that. Like, you guys went and shot that without me.
Yeah.
And then he tried to have his name removed from the film, and the studio went, we've already printed it, your name's on it, sorry.
Yeah.
Then the film released, and, well, it got its money back, but the critical reception was negative.
Nope. Yeah.
And, that kind of left Leatherface kind of limping along after this for a little while.
It did, yeah. I caught this one. Actually, I think, if I'm right, I actually saw this one before I watched number one.
Okay.
You know, it was on late one night on one of those random channels. I think it was Bravo. I mean, that's how old I am. If you ever watch Bravo, that's where I saw this movie. And I'd always, been interested in watching the Leatherface movies. Michael, Jason, Freddy. Those were my babysitters back in the 80s and 90s. So I was just like, oh man, I want to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they've still banned the original film. It's supposed to be really gory. Oh wait, number 3 is on TV. I'll watch it. And I'd already, fallen in love with Ken Foree at that point since Dawn of the Dead and, seeing him in some other movies. And so seeing him in this, I'm like, well, this movie's class. Then years and years and years later, when you have the internet and you have Wikipedia and you're able to go and read the notes behind the scenes and things like that, and you're like, wow, like how this film even survived being made is one thing. Like between when you fire your director and then just rehire him again because you can't get anybody else in, what does that say? With the fact that you actually have the movie so short that it's only, an hour and 25 minutes? Mm-hmm. Like, some movies don't even really get to establish a plot in sometimes with that length. But two of the saving graces, I think, for this movie personally are Viggo Mortensen and Ken Foree. Like, you might have heard of Viggo Mortensen. He did a little film after this in New Zealand with that guy who did Brain Dead. So I've heard it's supposed to be good, But you start with that title card recap. You have to. I think, for this review, I'm going to just say it. Every Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie should have this kind of title card kickback. Just like the original movie. Just tell us what happened again. Make us go back and watch it. This little girl, Sally, and her friends went out one day, came across a cannibalistic family with a chainsaw, scared the shit out of her, got her locked up. But then she died in the mental hospital.
What? They've killed Sally now?
Well, yeah, they don't want to get her back, and they're wanting to start all new again, I suppose, for 1991.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, at this point, it already is now like Choose Your Own Adventure series, where this film's like, yeah, number 2 didn't really happen.
Yeah, no.
And this is kind of loosely now following the first film. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did, for myself, as I grew up as well, canonized it so that the Leatherface from number 2 is just this one. He's been moving across country for a very long time.
Well, I mean, the one at the end of 2 got a chainsaw through his stomach and blew up in a grenade. So I'm like, no, that one's dead.
Yeah, well,
and then this one's intro was also like, yeah, there's no such thing as Leatherface. It's just different family members wearing the mask.
Well, that's it. This one introduces W.E. Sawyer, who's survived.
That?
Yeah, supposedly was the last person they found from the first one and was tried and executed. And the jury decided that his alternative persona was this character Leatherface, who they actually never ever found. The intro over the credits, I totally forgot. This is amazing.
Well, this is New Line Cinema going, how did we start A Nightmare on Elm Street? Oh yeah, Freddy making his glove.
Yeah.
Well, we're relaunching Leatherface, so let's have him making his mask.
Yeah, so he kills that girl with his hammer and cuts her face off and then starts chopping it up. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, and during the opening, when you see K&B Effects logo or their names pop up, you're like, okay, I'm sure I'm going to see some fantastic makeup effects and gore in this film. You're going to see some fantastic makeup effects.
Yeah.
You're not going to see very much gore or kills.
Yeah.
MPAA.
But we've got to establish our heroes, or, heroine, I suppose. And so we have Michelle, played by Kate Hodge, and Ryan, played by William Butler, in their car driving through the desert. And you know how this is playing out. I mean, you must have seen Jeepers Creepers. It also made me think of that other film. Was it Joyride? With the two guys driving across the country, and they have the guy in the truck chasing them. You gotta love a good desert road with a rusty ass truck or something chasing you.
But no, the only thing that's really chasing them is, well, their fallout, because they were in a relationship and now it's ending. But they're driving from California all the way to Florida, and they're going to make a way through Texas.
Yeah.
Because she wants to deliver her dad's car to him.
Yeah.
And so they pull into a petrol station. You're like, oh, yeah, here we go.
Well, we've also got to establish as well, you've had over the radio reports reporting that they found people in body pits.
Yes, yeah.
There seem to be these toxic puddles of just 40 to 50 bodies that have been sat around. And I was very surprised because they're driving all night. So they actually drive past one of these small police stops, and you get these two guys in their hazard suits coming across bodies and stuff. And it's nicely established, but it's cheap.
Yeah.
I read in the notes as well that they filmed a lot of this film close to a theme park.
Yeah, so you can hear people screaming on the roller coasters in the background.
Yeah, which I was trying to listen to on this review, but I couldn't hear them. But yeah, like Gary said, the next morning it's daytime. They've got to pull over because they hit an armadillo.
That's right. Yeah,
and they stop at Last Chance Garage with Alfredo. And you don't know he's called Alfredo until like 3/4 of the way through the movie. He's just a crazy attendant. But I really do like this guy, how he establishes himself.
Well, he's a creepy, perverted, monster.
Yeah.
And he starts creeping on her. He's got a little spy hole when she's in the bathroom.
I like his change though, where it's like, yeah, I'll help you with your car. Help crazy ass California girl.
I'm gonna service you real good, man. Don't you worry about it. Little California daddy's girl, huh? You don't like it? Mm-hmm.
But we're also introduced to Tex, played fantastically by Viggo Mortensen. And he is, he's like He's super good looking.
Oh, yeah.
Super suave.
Yeah.
And he's like, maybe I can get a lift with you guys? And she's like, well, maybe we can debate it. And Ryan's just like, no, we're on a real tight schedule. So no, forget about it.
I mean, in fairness, he's right. He's like, look, we're just going to keep following this road. It'll take us to the highway. And Tex is like, no, you should take this side road. It's the quickest route. And I'm like, bro, I've seen.
Don't want to go down that road.
Don't want to go down that road. No.
But Tex is the one who ends up spots Alfredo spying on her and gives him grief. And there's a bit of a commotion outside. But then he runs back inside, grabs his shotgun, and chases the kids off. Essentially,
yeah.
And Tex appears to have also been shot at in this confrontation as well, as the back of the car is taken out.
And so Michelle and Ryan decide that they're going to take the shortcut because it's the quickest route, and they start driving down. It starts turning to nighttime, doesn't it? Because we see this badass truck appear from the Last Chance garage and start chasing Michelle and Ryan down. They blow a tire and they've got to stop to repair. And so I found with this review of the film, like I haven't seen it in at least 15 years, but the film always had a really good pace for me back when I was younger. But now it feels like it is being rushed along. Yeah. Maybe that's mainly because they had all this stuff establishing, but they've cut it all out. So they've just got to get from point A to point B as quickly as they can and get these kids killed.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, they were also filming nights. And this is also the first and only Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie filmed in LA and not in Texas.
Wow.
But they also filmed it during the summer where they had the shortest nights possible.
Right.
So it was a rush every night to just film everything that they had planned during the day. But yeah, like sun was rising early and earlier and earlier, so they were up against the clock.
And you can tell with some of the set pieces as well, it is literally just nothingness. So when the sun would have come up, you would have been able to see all the background. So we've got to get it at nighttime, make it look more isolated, more claustrophobic. Like this point I did kind of like where he's trying to change the tire and she can hear this squeaking noise.
Yeah.
And she's just like, where's that coming from? And then that's when we get the first reveal of Leatherface turning up with his sword.
Yeah. And he starts chainsawing up the car. He ends up tearing it to pieces, but they manage to get away.
Yeah.
Leatherface ends up with the back of the car in his hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they get chased down the road and end up crashing into Benny, played by Ken Foree. I'm like, finally, the fucking movie has just got 1,000 times better.
Oh, absolutely. Like, this is, for me, where the film really begins.
Yeah.
Ken Foree, the moment he's on screen, I'm like, this film has its star. This guy is the one who commands your attention. As an audience member, you gravitate towards him because he's confident. And his character is prepared for this kind of eventuality.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, there's someone that we can actually root for and get behind who might be able to handle himself. And he's there, he's like, here, take some pain pills. I mean, these pain pills, they take them, and then the two of them are like, oh, I'm tired, I need to pass out.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, you've just accidentally taken this guy out and you're just going to take his pills? What the hell? But, like, he also comes across really, really helpful.
Yes, and a nice guy.
Yeah, he's been caught up in this situation. How he's down this road...
Well, he explains that he does this, he's been doing this for years, he's got somewhere that he goes, that he's preparing for his mates.
On the very road that Leatherface has been going around killing people.
Yeah.
And he's never been killed once.
No.
It's amazing. That's how good Ken Foree is. He's able to stay alive while Leatherface is killing people. But he heads back up to the main road and he comes across Tink, who is another member of the Sawyer family. We won't find out his name until a little bit later on, but he's got the truck that we recognize and he's there to help, but he's also missing a hand, which is really quite creepy. And they have this kind of weird confrontation where Ken Foree is just like, look, I need your help. I've got some people down there that's crashed. And he's just like, what do you think these goddamn flares are for?
But yeah, Ken eventually spots the chainsaw in the back of the truck. And then he's like, well, I just need a minute. I need to go and get something from my overturned truck. And we see him like quickly trying to load his rifle. But Tinks has no problem just getting in his truck and like, well, push or shove. And just wrecks Ken Foree's truck completely.
Yeah. I really, really like this bit because Benny gets knocked down the hill. He rolls all the way down to the bottom. And he gets confronted by Leatherface as well. So it's kind of like, organized. They cause the crash and they're trying to obviously deal with the bodies. It's fun watching Benny fight Leatherface. And then you have this random girl who we'd seen in the opening credits.
Yes.
She kind of lures Leatherface off and then circles back around to Benny. And you like Gary said, like, Ken Foree is such a great actor. He established what Dawn of the Dead was for us back in the day. So he's able to easily sit with this actress, who we don't even find out her name, really.
No.
We just know she's the crazy girl in the woods who's been surviving for like a couple of days, a week. Yeah, about a week. But between the two of them, they established that, you know, her sisters were all killed. These people eat the victims. And she's trying to help, but she's also gone a little bit mad. And he's also really sympathetic, because at first he's just like, give me answers. And then he notices she's injured.
Yeah. Because, he was a bit reluctant to believe that there was a chainsaw-wielding psychopathic family in the woods.
Yeah.
But when he saw the chainsaw injuries to the car, and he saw the chainsaw in the back, and this truck's been taken off, and now he's found this random girl in the woods, like... This film technically starts like in the middle of another Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where everyone else is dead and we already have a final girl.
Yeah.
And now Benny's just found himself in the middle of this film. And I do like the moment where he shares a cigarette with her and she gives him the lighter. And then he wanders off and he's like, look, just stay here and I'll come back.
Well, he does say to her, do you want to come with me? And she's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. But then he's like, all right, well, you stay here and I will come back for you. But so he wanders off, and then she wanders off and wanders right into Leatherface, who makes short work of her.
That was a cool trap, though. He had the saw hanging on the tree, and she's like, oh, where is he? Because, like, Leatherface leaving his saw lying around. And, like, yes, you don't really get to see the gore, which is a shame, but the Spielberg special effect trick, you know, your imagination does the work for you. I like this kill because, fuck me, this movie's only an hour 25 minutes, and I've already got 2 kills over number 2 that barely had anything happen.
Fair.
But Ryan obviously tries to wake Michelle up and say, like, look, we really need to get out of here. And then they're making their way through the woods, aren't they?
Yeah, and he ends up with his foot in like a small bear trap.
Yeah.
And so he's screaming for her, go, save yourself, get out of here. And Leatherface like, Mrr.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God he's dead.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't have to deal with his terrible acting anymore.
Okay. Slow and easy. I'm about to fucking lose my mind!
I love it though, because Michelle starts running through the rest of the woods and she comes across the house. And the whole time I was sat here, I was just like, man, I could really watch House of a Thousand Corpses.
Right.
You know, like, oh, I wonder where Rob Zombie got some of his ideas. Like, even like this old, crappy kind of 1990s Texas Chainsaw Massacre hasn't, like I said, got the greatest moments, but it establishes a lot of things that you see in horror movies that are just maybe cliche, maybe great, I don't know. The dark house in the middle of the woods, the girl screaming after seeing her boyfriend get killed by the masked killer. Michelle heads into the house and comes across the crying little girl.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember even when I was younger, I'm like, oh my God, they've got children in this one.
I was like, oh wait, this child is part of the family.
Exactly.
She's not a victim.
Yeah.
And she ends up stabbing Michelle in the leg with this thing.
Yeah.
And that's when Tex turns up again. You're like, oh.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen's part of the family.
Now, apparently, he wasn't the first person they hired for this film for that role either. They auditioned for him and went, nah. And they hired somebody else. And then several days into production, they were like, this guy playing Tex is not working out. We need to let him go. Hey, Viggo, you still want the job? And Viggo's like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. And he came right back.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
And that's it. I know, like, Viggo Mortensen had done a few things leading up to this. I mean, I remember seeing when we reviewed Reflecting Skin.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, oh my God, this guy can just take a script that literally makes no sense on some perspectives and make it his own. And that I'd always felt that from seeing him in this. I remember when people went to watch Lord of the Rings Fellowship the first time, they're like, oh, Viggo Mortensen. I'm like, the guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre? He's in this? No way.
Well, considering it was from the guy that directed Brain Dead, it's like, well, that makes sense. But yeah, you feel like he is like the head of the family until we then get introduced to Mama.
Yes.
And we also find out that Grandpa's still alive. No, wait, he's definitely dead now, but they're still keeping him around.
Well, I mean, they're feeding him. I mean, he must be, what, like 127 years old or something? But I do love the fact that, like I said, we haven't seen a lot of blood and guts, but with the nails in the hands to the chair, you know, with Michelle screaming. It takes me back to the original movie.
The fact that they've got Ryan strung up in the kitchen as well.
Yeah.
And he's not dead yet.
No, like...
It's like, hey, Leatherface, what's wrong with your chainsaw?
Yeah, come on, man. They're like, are you even working on this kind of stuff? Because they even complain at Leatherface that he hasn't killed Ken Foree yet.
Right.
You know, and so they decided they're going to headshot Ryan. They've got, what, 2 sledgehammers hooked up?
I think just the one. I think it's just the one.
Just the one, but the little girl's like screaming at them, let me do it, you promised me. And I love the look that Viggo Mortensen gives Tex. You know,
well, we did promise. She's old enough now.
I'm like, oh, this is well creepy. I don't think, if he wasn't in it, like you said, I don't think anybody else could have held the screen as well as he did, because he has a moment with Tink where Tink calls him like Eddie or something.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I want you to call me Tex. And so he seems really weak against the other members of the family.
She looks to me like she might go all screamy on us, Eddie.
I wish you'd call me Tex.
I mean, there's other, like, kind of, I suppose, family moments here where we have Leatherface off, like, training on his spelling bee thing, his PC pal, I think it is. And we've got him wearing the headphones and then putting them on Michelle yelling at him and him taking it back, and then Tink taking the headphones, the Walkman, throwing it in the oven. Then Leatherface losing his cool and forcing him to go and grab it with his real hand.
That's it, because then it makes you think, oh, that's how he lost his other arm.
Yeah, probably upset Junior. But we've also got Ken Foree just lurking around in the forest, hunting, and he's come across Alfredo from the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And basically he's just stalking him, hunting him, eventually confronts him.
Well, Alfredo's throwing body parts that they're not using anymore or not eating into this soup pool swamp that we'd obviously established earlier on in the movie. This is what's happened. And I do like the way he gets that head and he's just like, we had some good times. And we had some good times. It's like, it's supposed to be gross. I mean, you're making that face. This is what you want from a horror movie, right?
I mean, that is the reaction you have from this character, and that is why you are so massively rooting for Ken to take him out. And he does. Well, he just smacks him in the face and he falls into the water and apparently drowns. So I'm like, all right. And Ken's like, yeah, one down.
Yeah.
And then he turns up at the house and he sees the freak show inside and he's like, nah. And he just lays waste with a machine gun. Mama just takes a bunch of shots to the chest.
Yeah.
Tink goes down. Tex is shot. Grandpa is fucking decimated. I was like, yes, Ken, come on, get him.
Everybody except the little girl. The little girl managed to escape, and Michelle just rips her hands free of the nails, and she decides that she's going to make her big escape for it. And I do like how this is now twisted. You know, at the start of the movie, she was a pacifist.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't like violence. And even Ryan had said to her, look, in the real world, you're going to have to deal with it. So it's like, oh, foreshadowing. And then there's the part with the armadillo where she gets the rock and she's like, oh, I'm really sorry, I have to kill you. But by this point, you know, she's fully gone mental. She's seen her boyfriend, ex-partner get, you know, ripped up by a chainsaw, and this family were going to eat her. Now she really wants to escape. But unfortunately for me, like this ending is harsh and weak, because you have the fight sequence between Ken Foree and Leatherface where they fall into, I suppose, the body swamp thing.
Yeah.
Or if it's the same one, I don't know. It's just, it's part of the set that they keep going back to as well. But I did want to bring up as well, I like the fact that you had Leatherface injure his leg in the first movie. Mm-hmm. And so in this movie, he's got like a leg brace.
That's right, yeah.
Now, is it a connection to the first movie, or does it just that this Leatherface character has a leg brace? You make up your own mind, but I do like how they've established it on his character, the squeaking noise, how he's fighting Ken as well. There's two endings to this movie. There's one where he throws Ken onto the chainsaw and Ken dies here. He's dead. And then there's one where, obviously, spoilers, he'll come back. But I've always liked the fact that when Benny is taken out, regardless of what ending you go with, Michelle getting the rock.
Yeah.
And she just bashing Leatherface's head in like she'd done, not like she'd done with the armadillo, but she's still trying to stay sane, but she's like, die!
Yeah. And Leatherface does then sink into the swamp as well. You're like, oh, well, he's dead. We did also forget to bring up as well that Ken Foree had blown up Aragorn. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we still don't actually find out what happens to Tink. Like, he's kind of disappeared out of the movie, so presumed alive still?
He'd been injured, he'd been shot twice,
That's right.
His fingers had been blown off, his ear had been blown off, and he'd made the call to Tex to go out and do something, but then obviously Tex has gone outside and been blown up, so it's just like, oh, what happened to the little girl? You know, are they going off to establish a new family?
She also appears in the original alternate ending. Like I say that because the very first time I watched this film, Benny died and did not come back. But then now I feel like I'm in an alternate reality where it was the other way around. But then I'm like, but I swear when they televised this, that was the ending that they showed.
But the one I watched originally, the first one I ever watched, Benny survived.
Okay.
And then I got surprised when I watched it, I think on DVD, and it just ended with him dead. And I'm like, no, wait, hold on. No, that's not the fucking ending.
Right.
Fucking Ken Foree always lives.
Because in the ending where it's just Michelle alive, she ends up getting to the main road and the police car comes and she's like, oh, brilliant, I'm saved.
Yeah.
And the police car drives right past her. And then stops a little bit down the way, and then the little girl pops up from the back and starts laughing at Michelle, and Michelle starts laughing at the little girl, and there it ends. And I was like,
that's a pretty cool. I mean, that's a callback to the first one, isn't it, where she was laughing?
Yes,
and
right. But yeah, so now the actual ending of the film, she gets to the road,
the last chance garage
car
truck
pulls
turns up,
and Ken pops up like, yeah, I'm still alive. I've just got this little scratch on my head.
Yeah, I took a massive chainsaw that the whole movie's been established on. I took it to the face and survived. That's how fucking awesome Ken Foree is.
Right, but well, the other guy is still alive. The guy that fell into the swamp is still alive.
Of course, Alfredo's still alive.
Yeah.
He just comes up behind and knocks Ken out. I'm like, Ken cannot get a break in this movie.
It's knock time and lover, and I'm back.
And they have this little fight, him and Michelle, but she grabs hold of the shotgun, doesn't she?
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh no, now, lady, I didn't mean no harm." She just blasts him.
Well, it's this line. It's like, "What's the chances a bitch like you knows how to use that?" And she's like, "Pretty fucking big." Splam.
Yeah. And then her and Ken drive off. Like, that's great. I mean, they have their final lines moment of the movie, and there they go.
There's roadkill all over Texas.
Got that right.
Yeah, what were your favourite scenes?
Fucking Ken Foree.
Oh yeah, mine too.
I've always just loved the way that this movie took a lot of the ideas from the first movie and then just kind of slotted it into what would have been a really shit entry into the series. But like I said, coming off the back of number 2, I was so excited after watching number 3 to go back and watch number 2 because I was like, oh, people say it's really, really good. And then I was like, it pales in comparison next to number 3. And number 3 is a fucking shit show thrown together. The title card, I really think at the beginning is great for just establishing that you're in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe, and there's going to be a guy running around with a chainsaw. That's it. It's really fucking easy to establish. The gas attendant, Alfredo, from the moment he turns up at the beginning as the scary attendant telling them to, don't go down that road, or, don't go in the toilet or whatever, to the point where he's at the swamp and he's throwing body parts in and he's like, is it soup yet? And then him and Ken Foree having their confrontation and he's like, fuck you, mister, and then fucking knocks him out. To him coming up in the alternative ending at the end and having his confrontation with Michelle. It's like, you have to have these crazy family members hold their own in the movie with a guy who's obviously the poster boy. He's got the Leatherface. He's got the chainsaw. He's not the best character in this one, but I feel that that's just... Sometimes the director doesn't know how to, use the character that they've got. The squeaky leg through the forest, I think, is really good to establish him stalking them. The kill where he gets the girl up against the tree. It's classic, I totally will take that kill over the 2 guys in the fucking car from number 2. Jesus. But then you look at the family. I do love Mama. Like the thing in her throat, the way her legs look, like how long has she been in this family? The way her and Tex tell Michelle that they're happy to let Leatherface or Junior have her private parts because he likes to make babies. I'm like, oh shit, don't let him know. Don't do that. That's fucking gross. I even like the Tink character for what he does. Like like you said, that oven sequence where he goes to put his hand in and then Leatherface holds it back and makes him use his good hand. I'm like, oh man, and yeah, like I said, Ken Foree. Any part with Ken Foree. Here's a part with Ken Foree, and there's Ken Foree again.
Motherfucker!
Yeah, I'm also going to back that up and just say, yeah, my favorite scene was Ken Foree.
Ken Foree.
Like, every scene with him in, he demanded your attention. He was fascinating to watch. He was brilliant. He had so much charisma, and it was just great to watch a horror movie where everyone is usually so helpless to have someone who was so capable. It was so refreshing. Really good.
Fuck is wrong with you? Why don't you leave us alone? You're hurt. You're hurt. Pizza.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is Leatherface playing with his PC pal, and I think it's like a picture of Santa.
Everything's food.
Yeah, and every response was
food. Yeah.
Food, and he keeps getting it wrong, and it just goes to show how childlike he is.
Yeah.
That was great. I like the intro, the opening sequence with the hammer bringing up the title sequence. I liked him stitching together the mask. Mm-hmm. That was very well done. Nice mood lighting. It was, I was like, I can see the special effects work here. It's great.
Yeah. I got to say as well, there was one really, really great shot I did like, and it was when Michelle and Ryan were driving away from the gas station, and you just get the shot of the car going along the horizon.
Sure, yeah.
And I think it was blue that they were going along.
Yeah, nice wide
really
shot.
Thought that was nice, yeah.
Well, Iain, do you recommend Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3?
Totally. This is, for me, this is the sequel to the first movie. I knew it was going to be campy the first time I watched it. I knew it was going to be cheap. I knew when I saw the poster and the VHS tape that it wasn't even going to like hold a candle to the original movie. But I think I'm going to say that for every single one of these movies we do after the original movie. It's just that one set a benchmark that the rest of them weren't allowed to get to. But this one does its best to get as close to it as you can with bad production, bad fucking studio care, bad financing, bad budget. But what you do have is Ken Foree kicking ass. You've got fucking Aragorn, Viggo Mortensen, fucking Tex, whatever you want to call him, holding his scenes alone in what could possibly just be a fucking swamp of a movie. But yes, totally Leatherface. The Saurus family, man.
Yeah, it is. And that's why I've been so on the fence with my recommendation for this film, because I can honestly say I've never recommended this film to anyone before. And even though there are elements and moments in this film that I think are really good, they're not enough to overcome the stuff that I think is terrible. So, no, I'm not going to be recommending Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, as this was mostly just disappointing compared to what came before. This sequel is very generic, with very little gore, and all the apparent brutal kills taking place off screen, unless it was by gunshots. And it's a shame that all of the K&B effects group's talents felt wasted here. The acting ranges from interesting, bad, and downright brilliant, with the latter going to the film-stealing performance of Ken Foree, who dominates the screen and probably should have been the lead character from the start. The film is more even in tone compared to Part 2, but it totally pales in comparison to the original in sheer terror and gritty realism, leaving this version feeling, well, tame and forgettable. So for me, this is a no, it's not worth the time. But if you're a fan of Ken Foree, just skip the first 30 minutes and enjoy a short horror film. There's roadkill all over Texas. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Oh! I like Texas.